Hi, welcome to the Rittner Floral School in Boston, Mass. I'm Dr. Steve Rittner, and it's a pleasure to welcome you into one of our classrooms today. We recently did a video, a how-to video, on how to make a romantic vase arrangement. It got a very strong response. A lot of you contacted us immediately. We got texting, we got messages, we got emails saying that you loved it and you wanted more. And so, that's what we're going to do. We're going to give you more. We're going to show you how to do another romantic vase arrangement in this video. Now, I think you're really going to enjoy it. And we start, of course, with our container. The container is always a good starting point on any of these things. And I generally like to recommend that if you're going to do a romantic type arrangement, you always start with a really nice container, something that the recipient can keep later after the design goes. And so we're going to start with that. But we're also going to use an interesting combination of materials in our design today. For example, one of the things we're going to be playing with in today's arrangement are some protea. Now, protea are an amazing flower, and we've got some really, really pretty protea and some other allied type things from a farm called Resendez Brothers Protea Growers in California. They produce some pretty amazing things. And we're going to incorporate this into a romantic arrangement. And I think you're going to find the way we do it kind of cool. We're going to start off with our protea. And we're going to take our protea and we're going to take a piece and place it right down here over along the side. And I'm going to gradually build up the arrangement using protea and a few other neat things. These are leucadendron. Aren't they amazing? They're also produced by the folks at Resendez Brothers, and they are a very, very good keeping flower. Notice the multilaterals. You can get very, very good coverage out of them, and they definitely give a very, very contemporary and unusual kind of an effect. I'm going to use a few of the leucadendron in this arrangement as well. And I'm going to take my leucadendron and I'm going to place one over here. I'm going to place another one over along here. In other words, I'm going to gradually work my leucadendron into the design so that we have an interesting effect. Now, we're also going to mix our materials together, and by coming up with an interesting mix, we can come up with a very, very unique kind of design. Let's play with some roses. Roses always say romance. And so I'm going to make sure that we get some roses into this arrangement. But the roses, as you can see, that I'm going to be playing with are not going to necessarily be red roses. We're going to play with some white roses because that's a little bit different. And that'll give us a different kind of cool effect to our design. We have some other interesting materials from the folks at Resendez. This is called Brasilia, and I'm going to take some of my Brasilia and work it in. And in other words, I'm gradually working my way around on the back part of the design, gradually creating the shape. I'm going to take another leucadendron and place a leucadendron here, and I'm just gradually working my way through the arrangement to come up with an interesting effect. The folks at Resendez Brothers also have boxwood. And this feels a little different than the boxwood that we normally see around Christmas time. And I think it's just a lovely foliage. So we're going to work a little boxwood in here. And then I'm going to take another protea and work another protea over here. In other words, I'm gradually working my way from left all the way down over towards the right. We'll fill in with other stuff too. But I think you're going to see the way we're doing this. This is going to come together very, very nicely. I have a little bit more Brasilia. I'm going to take a little more Brasilia and place it over here. And the folks at Resendez have different varieties of Brasilia. Here's one that's a little bit different. Isn't this amazing? It's absolutely beautiful stuff. Let's place some of this into our design as well. So I'm working from the left, working all the way over towards the right. I'm going to add a little bit more of my boxwood in here. In other words, I'm mixing my materials together to come up with something that's going to be kind of interesting, unique, and unusual. And then I'm going to take another leucadendron, and I'm going to use my leucadendron to angle down here. So you can see the overall shape or form that we are creating on our design. Now, this is going to be a romantic design, and I could leave it just with the flowers alone, but I can't help myself. We've got Valentine's Day coming up, so I have a little sisal heart. Now, I picked this up at a local floral wholesaler. If you're in the trade, you can get it from your wholesaler. If you're not in the trade, you can get it from a local florist. I used a glue gun to attach it to a pick. I'm going to work this in too because I think it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit funky, and it definitely says, yeah, this is Valentine. Of course, we could do this design with or without. In other words, we're not required to have something like this, but certainly it makes a nice kind of an effect. I'm going to take a few more roses and gradually work a few more roses into my arrangement, and I'm going to place one right over here in front of the first one, slightly to one side, and I'm going to place another one in slightly to the other side. In other words, I'm just gradually working my way down. If this seems to be in the way, I can always adjust this slightly in terms of my placement so that these will kind of give us a kind of a shaping to our design. I want to work a little bit further down from the back, and so I'm going to take another one of my proteas, and I'm going to place another protea right in here. Notice how this is getting more complex because of the way we're handling our materials. And you know something? While I'm placing proteas over on the right side of the design, let's take another one and work another one over here. And so I'm going to place another one in a little bit closer. So you can see this is gradually getting a little bit more complicated and a little bit more ornate in terms of our material. I'm going to add another protea over towards the left side. And just bear with me, my viewer, as I cut it. And I'm going to work that guy right over in here. So we have some interesting things going on with our protea. Now, let's see, what other things can we do that'll be kind of cool? Well, we have some of our hydrangea. And of course, hydrangea is the darling of all stuff. People love hydrangea. We have some green hydrangea. I'm going to work a little green hydrangea in here. Hydrangea is a flower that you definitely want to hydrate well before you do something like this. Should it wilt, just take it out of the foam, cut it, put it in some warm water, and within an hour or two it'll come back. It tends to be a little sensitive, but I can't help myself. We've got some hydrangea that looks just so good that I want to play with it a little bit. And I'm going to work another little bit of my hydrangea right over here. In other words, we're going to use our hydrangea almost as a focal area. And notice how that's filling in so nicely for me. Now, we did start with our protea and we mixed them with a few of our roses. I'm not going to forget that. Let's take another rose, work it in here. So I have a rose that is placed in towards the center of the design. And then I'm going to add a couple more roses into our mix. Let's take one and work it right here. So we have one that's coming right here towards the front. And then I'm going to take another rose and work it in, going over towards the side where my leucadendron happens to be. In other words, you can see, my viewer, that I'm making very, very good use of my roses. And I only have a half a dozen here. But notice how we're getting a very, very nice thing working with our roses. Now, we still have some empty spots here and there in the design, and I'd like to use what we call an accent flower. And there is an amazing accent flower that is one of my favorites, and it smells so good. It is called wax flower. And wax flower is also produced by the folks at Resendez Brothers in California. It's an accent flower, or we used to call them fillers, but I think accent sounds so much nicer, that you can find at most florists and also in your mass market. Let's take a little bit of our wax flower and work it in. And notice how it provides contrast. It provides contrast in terms of color. It provides contrast in terms of shape. And I'm working just a little touch of it here and there into my design. I'm going to work some more right over here so that we have a little of wax flower worked in on this side. You can see, my viewer, that this design started very simply, but it's getting more and more complex as we go along. And the mixture of the materials that we're using here gives us a very, very rich kind of an effect. So notice I'm taking just a little bit more of my wax. I placed it down here. I'm going to place a little more of my wax flower right over here, tucking it in. Notice that I'm not using very much foliage, my viewer, in terms of traditional kinds of foliages, because I really don't need it. All of these materials are working very, very well for me. I do have a spot here that seems a little bit open. I'm going to sneak another leucadendron right in that spot. And then I do want to add a little bit more right here to the front of the design. I have a little more boxwood. I'm going to work a little boxwood here and a little bit right here. And notice how that fills it very, very nicely for me. One of the advantages of some of our materials, like our Brasilia, is that even the foliage works well for it, so we can always take a little touch and tuck it in here and there. So for example, if I don't want the pick of my heart to be obvious, I can basically sneak a little piece in, as you can see there. Now, I also want to make sure that all of my mechanics are covered. Most of them are covered already. I sometimes like to use a little of Spanish moss. We sometimes call it Stephen hair here at Rittner's Floral School because it resembles kind of my hair. No, I gave it the office, and then I'm taking a little of it and I'm just tucking it in. But it doesn't really require all that much. I might put a little bit on the back side as well. So what do you think, my viewer? A romantic vase arrangement, quick, easy, and fun, the Rittner Floral School way, but notice, not traditional. We've done a very interesting thing here. We've taken our protea, we've created a shape using our protea coming from here, gradually working our eye over to this side. To come up with a counterbalance, we've played with some of our roses, taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, creating a diagonal going in this way. So we've got a diagonal here and a diagonal here crisscrossing, making use of both our protea, our leucadendron, and some of our interesting materials to come up with the overall pattern or shape of the design. A little bit of our hydrangea worked in as almost a focal kind of an area, and the use of some of our wax flower to come up with counterbalance and contrast in our design. It is definitely a romantic vase arrangement, very different than the last romantic arrangement that we made, and something that shows how you can take some very interesting juxtapositions of material, different kinds of things like protea, roses, hydrangea, leucadendron, wax flower, plus some of these other materials, and come up with something that is really unusual, different, and distinctive, and yet quite romantic. Well, I hope you enjoyed this, my viewer. Again, the whole concept is here at Rittner's, we believe very strongly in quick, easy, and fun. And I hope that you enjoyed this brief video. On behalf of all of us here at Rittner's Floral School, we thank you for viewing this, and we hope you come and view a few more of our videos. Thank you.